Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Voice of Youth, a brand new show of Hidayat Television Network presented to you from Birmingham Studios. I'm your host Ali Mohsin Hashmi. As you're aware, this brand new show, Voice of Youth, has been designed purely to highlight the issues revolving our youth and also they are now becoming of ever so paramount importance now that our youth are really looking to progress in the society. The pressure from external powers and internal powers, and the internal pressure and the external pressure is now on our youth ever so high, and obviously it leads to issues like education, unemployment, crime rate going so high, and use of drugs. And also we've been talking about these issues for the past couple of weeks with the help of our senior analysts who've always joined us on the panel. Without further ado, today we have our parent who actually joined us yesterday, our sister Sayyida Samreen Zaidi on the left. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Right next to Sayyida Samreen we have Sayyida Qurratullain Zaidi, who has always been with us throughout the series of Voice of Youth, added a great deal of value. Brief introduction of both of our guests. Samreen Zaidi is a senior management professional, have worked in hotel and management, worked on various management positions and also worked in the academics as well as a teacher. The reason for Samreen to be with us today and yesterday was purely because she was an example parent who's gone through very a challenging lifestyle and also attained a degree whilst being married and mother of 3 children. Children are all well placed in the society, doing a great deal of work for the society and also also educating themselves at university, college and GCSE respectively. Brief introduction of Qurratullain. Qurratullain is an active youth worker who has worked on various projects. Have been working with age group of 13 to 25 for past 7 to 10 years. Worked with various councils, private and public sector. Welcome both of you on show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just a brief recap of what we talked about yesterday and what we covered in the previous episodes. The brief recap is that we have touched up on education, why the underachieving children in our Asian community, who actually belong predominantly from Asian areas of Britain, that number of underachieving is ever so high. That leads to taking our youth of 16-year-old age, 15 to 16-year-old age, who actually in GCSEs, they then do not attain very good grades. A, B's and C's are only attained by 36% of parents' children who are actually in manual labour, and 69% of parents who are actually professionals, a bit like yourselves. Their children are likely to receive A to C's. Now, the reason why we picked this bracket A, B's and C's is purely because that's a prereq for somebody to take up A levels and then progress the route of traditional university. On the other hand, we actually talked about children who actually sit in the bracket of 36%. Their parents are in manual labour, they're taxi drivers or they labourers or they decorators or carpenters or in building trade. Their children would attain A's, B's and C's, and the probability of them doing that and the percentage is 36%, which is really a slim percentage. And we look at the bigger number, which is 69, 36 is almost half of that number. So we talked about why that divide, and then we come to that particular end of our debate where we discussed that responsibility to a degree sits with our parents. And when we say to a degree, we're very careful because we talked about our parents taking the responsibility of engaging with the child and also helping them bridge that communication gap that's in their family demographics purely because of lack of education in the parents. Can you give us a brief recap of what your point of view was yesterday for the benefit of the viewers who actually didn't watch the show yesterday?
Well, briefly, it was mentioned that professional parents, I think we discussed that, are more comfortable approaching the teachers, approaching the schools and challenging what the teachers are actually teaching their kids. Are they achieving what they should be achieving? Working class parents probably are not as comfortable approaching the teachers. And yet we also did mention that because of the statistics and how did we identify those statistics, because parents that are probably less educated have more of a challenge in front of them, they're probably focusing on their children in other ways, motivating their children. And we mentioned, like my parents and Annie's parents had a less education, and so their motivation was, you don't want to be like us and you don't want to have to be doing the kind of work we have been doing.
So reverse motivation.
A better life, and to encourage them to have a better life. That was the motivation for their education.
So this is for the parents. So those parents especially watching us today, and आपने अगर कल का शो नहीं देखा था तो हमें रिक्वेस्ट आया हमारी सिस्टर की तरफ से कि हम इस शो को we should conduct this show in bilingual fashion. So we would speak to you in English, and those parents especially don't understand English very well, हम आपके लिए उर्दू में भी बात करेंगे. The email address, आपको मालूम है कि on Saturday we actually take live calls and emails, but on Sunday we only take emails. So you can send in your emails to VOY, which is Voice of Youth, voy@hidayat.tv. We have received various emails that we actually will try and bring in as and when, and we briefly covered some of the emails in yesterday's program. So once again, keep your emails coming, and thank you very much for your involvement. Kuratalain, we have been very strategic in the previous weeks, and the reason why we're not strategic this particular week is purely because we wanted to keep this to be a show for the parents this particular week, and also for the benefit of the youth who are actually watching this. They actually want to bridge that gap with their parents, and clearly we would speak to Sister Samreen on what sort of effect it brings to the upbringing of that particular child. But in terms of stats, can you share with us some of the stats who actually come from Asian community?
Yeah.
Those children who actually, first of all, up to 16, so when they're actually receiving GCSE grades, and also when they're actually finishing schools, because we're aware that there is a 41% school dropouts in Asians. So the total of whatever school dropout rate is, 41% of Asian children are actually dropped out before they hit GCSEs. And when they hit GCSEs, they've got the big dilemma of getting the grades, and then after GCSEs, they don't know with their grades whether to take the traditional route or whether to take the shortcut or a different alternative to get to the university. And even when they get to universities, I've got some stats that we will talk about.
Yeah.
So can you cover that part briefly?
Yeah, this was done by the Youth Cohort study in 2002 for main activities that 16-year-old are inactive and engaged with.
Yeah.
Full-time education, your Pakistani young children are 77% more like 77%
are in full-time
education.
Right, so this is basically the table that shows the 16-year-olds in this country which belong to Asian community. What do they do when they're 16? So 79% of them are in full-time education.
Sorry, 77% of Pakistani children.
77% of Pakistani children are in full-time education.
And there's 79% of Bangladeshi children are in full-time education.
Okay.
Then the government support training, like your apprenticeship or your outside national curriculum, 5% of them are engaged by Pakistani children.
So whilst there's 77 are in a full-time traditional school-related education, only 5% of those or 5% of youth on top of 77 are in
government support training, like your apprenticeship or your outside other skill training programs. And then compared to 9% of Bangladeshi children engaging in government training.
Okay.
And with your 3% of your Pakistani children in full-time jobs, and 3% of them in part-time, and there's 9% of them which are out of work.
Right, okay, so this is the divide of 100% of our 16-year-old in Pakistani, Bangladeshi community and Indian community. How does that number compare with our indigenous majority?
Compared, is 69% of in full-time education.
Yeah.
That's 10% less than ours.
So they are a majority number.
Yep.
But they're in a minority when it comes to 16 and education.
Yep.
Okay.
And as well as 10% of them are in government support training compared to the 5% of Pakistani children. And 10% of them are in full-time jobs, 4% of part-time job, and only 6% are them out of work.
Now, that's 6% out of work and that 9%. So unemployment for us, as Asian, by default, we would sit in 9% of our 16-year-old youth are facing unemployment, whereas only 6% of majority indigenous group are facing unemployment. What do you think is causing that?
There are many factors that are causing that. I mean, we can't, the reason isn't them as an individual. They are facing a lot more battles when they're going to apply for jobs. And they, I think, as young people, like I said to you, third generation young people think that we were discussing, I think you were discussing this issue in other programs where are we British or are we English and all this, this kind of thing. If you think that you're British, you can become complacent. You don't try as hard. Whereas in the eyes of the interviewer, in the eyes of the employer, you are still a minority group.
You're an ethnic,
and you are an ethnic group, and you will be critically analysed in that way when you are interviewed. Yeah. And if we go into the interview thinking we've got all the qualifications, that's all we need, and that's not enough. You will need to work harder to get that job, when there are minimum jobs available as it is for professionals. Yeah. You know, and when you're out there, it is difficult. It's not easy.
But I mean, this is a pretty interesting view, is that public sector and private sector, the government has decided to pull out 650 million approximately over the next 4 years out of their public spending. So all the projects which were directly, you know, associated with that sort of funding, all the businesses and all the local councils who were able to fund these ventures, they're now having to do the cuts in that particular division. So because of that particular funding being stopped and economic climate being very unfriendly for the businesses, we've got our own challenges in the trade market, and also the recession double dip is literally looming. So in these climate, the job opportunities out there are really, really thin. So what you're saying is that when an Asian youth applies for a particular job, that probability for them getting that job is really slim, purely because when compared with indigenous group, their application is likely to be...
It's harder for them to prove. It's harder because obviously, without going down the legal terminology, there is government requirements for a certain amount of people that you have to interview, that you have to employ. But at the end of the day, if you don't get the applicants, then they'll interview you.
So you're referring to the equal opportunity bit?
The equal opportunity situation, where you will get the equal opportunities, but that's in theory. In practical terms, I as an employer will employ the right person for the job that I'm interviewing for, and he has to be seen to be suitable for the job.
So what you're saying is an employer could, so for example, an employer could still say, right, okay, I'm looking for a commercial manager, and then suddenly there are 100 applicants. Out of those 100 applicants, 80 of them are Asian and 20 of them are indigenous. 80 of them will be interviewed, but likelihood of getting the job of those 20 is far more than those 80 applicants.
Probably because of their approach to the job.
That's right.
Not because of the discrimination aspect of it.
Right. Okay. Well, I've got some stats, and I'll let you share those stats with us. It's definitely because of discrimination. Okay. I can assure you that. So, as much as we would like to think that it's not discrimination, we are still being discriminated. And Home Office have recently conducted that particular bit of service. So, Kurathalan, would you share some stats? And before you share those stats, your view on discrimination at employment as well.
See, when I work with a lot of ethnic Asian and your black young people, I always emphasise that your race and your ethnicity, your identity does play a big part in your future job prospect.
So your skin of the colour of your skin, basically.
It does. So for them not to be in education, with no qualification, your skin colour and where you're from, now without them subconsciously, there's all this feedback is up for them. Where they come from, lack of no qualifications, and the skin colour. So in order to them, they've got to work 4 times harder than their peers who are in suburban areas, got a qualification, and are the majority in this country. So I always say to young people that how to present themselves, because I think a lot of young people think could have got qualifications, or because they've got the gift of the gab, they can walk in and it's easy. I've put 98 young people into employment in my best training, which is basic employment.
You've managed to get 98 members of youth recently in employment.
And 200 got national qualifications, GCSE levels.
MashaAllah, that's
and
very
that's predominantly our ethnic community, Asian young people, because
fantastic.
I don't see there's no one else giving a push, so I thought I'll just do it myself.
That's great.
But it's funny how young people used to come to me, do through the interview stages, pet them up. They're walking with the latest designer trainers, the latest designer tracksuit bottoms, you know, and I was sit down at an informal interview. They won't shake my hand like you would. They high-five me or give me that dap. The young people do, and talk to me like they're talking to their friends on the street corners on the phone, and straight away I'll be like, go out, do it again. I had to mentor them for at least 12 weeks for them to get inside the head, or mould them into actually prospective interviewees, you know. And it's so hard that they weren't educated in that in school.
No,
the mannerism, the talk.
This attitude that I don't, image shouldn't matter.
That's it.
I'm going to be an individual. I am an individual.
So
that is
who's
all
thinking
very
that
good.
way?
Young
It's
people's,
the teenager,
yes.
the
Right,
young
okay.
person. The youth of today think that being themselves is okay. But in theory that is okay. On TV that's okay. In your normal day-to-day life it might be okay. But in your professional life, that's where the gap is. The bridge between leaving education and coming into professional life, there's no training there.
Transition.
There's nothing telling somebody how they should change from that child or teenager or young person who has no
I'll come
commitment
back to
or
you on that. I think
responsibilities.
I'll come back to you on that. Kuretlan, we were going through some stats.
Yes.
So discrimination when you apply for a job, if you're Asian, what are the figures as per the government?
The UK Parliament, so it's officially national statistic government.
Available to
Yes.
anybody who wishes to refer to.
You mentioned, shall we go for the unemployment statistics first?
Yeah, let's go for unemployment
Okay,
first.
Asian young people, this was done in 23rd of May of this year, so it's recent statistics.
So they're really
very
recent.
recent.
Okay.
Okay, Asian young people from 16 to 25. In 2008, 22.8% were unemployed.
So, okay. Now, in 2008, we're aware that since 2009 onwards, we've had a major youth explosion, I should say, because the population growth within Asian community was ever so high within 2009 to 2011, and the age group which entered the youth, which is 13 onwards, was quite high, which wasn't actually calculated or accounted for in 2008 when the previous figures were accounted. Okay. So in 2012, so 2008, 16 to 25-year-old unemployment was 22.8%.
And well, March of this year, it's increased by 26.7%.
God, okay.
And if you break it down,
Yeah.
the Indian community of young people, 24.2% are unemployed.
Sorry, how much?
24.2, sorry.
24.2 Indian.
Yep.
Okay.
Compared to the 33.6 of Pakistani and Bangladeshi young people.
Okay.
Okay.
What's the unemployment in our indigenous group?
20%.
Oh, okay. So the unemployment actually sits with Asian groups, isn't it?
Pakistani and Bangladeshi are 33.6.
That's very interesting. For the benefit of the viewers especially watching us today, we've just briefly discovered that our unemployment figures show recently calculated by the government and released by the Parliament in 2012 May. More than a quarter of our generation living in the UK is actually unemployed. That really is a scary figure.
Yes.
More than a quarter of our generation, our youth, is unemployed. What is it that they're doing?
Well, if you break it down and focus on predominantly the Asian young people, the government's reasons, they even gave us reasons why they believe young people are unemployed. Funny enough, they say discrimination plays a big part.
Right. So
this is not me.
This is going back to what we talked about. So. Clearly, because Samreen has been an employer once, she has sat on that chair where she's interviewing people, and being interviewed herself henceforth. So what we're saying is that that more than a quarter of our youth is unemployed, And this is who is saying that? Government?
This is the Parliament saying the reasons why our Asian young people are
they're discriminated against.
If we've got a few factors are discrimination at the top of the list. They have a lower education achievement, which we've known, discussing on the show.
So lower education achievement between the age group of 16 to 25?
Yes, I think post-16, like your GCSEs, I think that's influences. Attending less prestigious universities.
Okay.
Living in areas of high unemployment, which we mentioned in the few shows.
A deprived area,
yes.
or flooded with a lot of
high
Asians,
unemployment,
so.
yes, so it would be your general inner city areas. And sector clustering, where we just live within our own community and not branch out to integration communities. And this is a really shocking statistic, again from the Department of Work and Pension, that if you have an African or Asian surname, young people need to send approximately twice as many job application forms compared to English names to get job interviewed. They even gave statistics on how discrimination works. In the public sector, discrimination is increased by 4%, compared to the private sector, discrimination is of 35%.
35%?
Yes, that's in your private sector.
So in the private sector, discrimination is 35% so the challenges straight away we're facing, and our youth who's watching this, we thoroughly understand your concerns, and we understand why is it that, you know, our youth, more than a quarter of our youth is actually unemployed. It is now a widely known fact that more than 35% of our youth are actually a victim of discrimination when applying for jobs. And clearly there are other factors, and which are obviously underachieving when you're actually getting your university degrees, and we're fully aware that only 20%, only 12% of our youth actually manage to get first-class degrees, which really is a sad number when you talk about only 6,500 applicants apply for universities, and only 12% of those who actually graduate. I'm not saying 12% of that 6,500. 12% of those who actually graduate manage to get first-class degrees. Hence, the discrimination and underachieving in universities. So, all those members of youth who are actually in colleges, doing your GCSEs, doing your A-levels, or if you are now going to start your GCSEs, it really is important for you to realize how important it is for you to get good grades. If you actually think that, you know, your GCSEs C's and D's and E's and even B's and C's nowadays aren't competitive anymore, because economic climate is really driving where the future of our youth is, because you go to university now, there's going to be a huge sums of money that you would be paying either up front or in the form of a high interest loan that you would be paying back as well. So when you talk about getting a student loan and going through all the hassle, and then you graduate, what for? Because you would then sit in the unemployed bracket, where you would be signed on for however long, and then you would be entered into trainings and then possibly end up as a receptionist. Nothing against the receptionist, or nothing against, you know, people in admin jobs, but the aspiration is, if you are going to the college and university and finish your law degree, we would expect you to become a respected solicitor, a respected barrister, rather than somebody answering calls in, you know, saying, "Good morning, sir, can I help you?" This isn't against somebody who is actually doing this. Metaphorically speaking, if you've done a degree in a particular division, we would expect you to have a career in that particular area. Isn't that a fair comment?
That's a fair comment, but then if we start from, again, back to the 16-year-olds, are we pushing those 16-year-olds into careers that maybe they're not wanting to take up?
Who's pushing them doing that?
Parents.
Okay.
And the communities.
The outer community. Are we pushing them into a direction that they are not skilled at? Are we pushing them into careers that they are not going to be happy doing? When we're doing that from that level, then all the way up, they're aspiring to be something they don't want to be. Are they going to achieve those results? Well, no, because they're doing them because mum and dad says so. Got to keep everybody happy.
But GCSEs, you can't help.
GCSEs you can, because you're choosing your subjects. Those subjects are going to influence your A-levels. Your A-levels are going to influence your degree, whichever subject you choose to
take.
So
what you're saying is the counselling from the parents,
from the beginning,
as well as teachers, prior to GCSEs need to be accounted for?
Yes.
Because clearly we know that, you know, when you're actually hitting your GCSEs.
I remember my son being told by one of his teachers that asking him what his parents' careers were and saying, bearing that in mind, maybe you should take up X, Y and Z. Now, why did she say that?
Yeah.
This was stereotypical of her saying that you're an Asian person of such and such a background, you can't travel too far away from your parents. This is another stereotypical attitude that, you know, you're going to be living closer to your parents, you're going to be doing this, your parents work like this, you'll be more happier doing a job that you've grown up seeing your parents doing. Why? Maybe his skills are elsewhere. Maybe his ability is something completely different.
So let's talk about your children. Clearly, because the reason why you're here with us today is, you know, brief introduction to you. We mentioned yesterday's program was that, you know, you were you did your A-levels and then you got married and then you had 3 children and then you decided to take up university because you wanted to do that for yourself, for the betterment of yourself, as well as to be able to, you know, speak to your children on the level that they would respect your opinion, and your opinion then becomes credible when it comes to their academic requirements. So when choosing subjects for your children, because one of your daughters now is doing GCSEs, one of your sons at university, and one of your children is doing A-levels. How did you go about doing the subjects choice for them?
I mean, like I said to you, when I was younger and I remember choosing my options, it was just a case of either you do.
You had to become a doctor or engineer.
Well, my parents would have just said, you know, you need to do this, you must do this. This is their level of understanding.
Right.
And when I was sitting down with my children, it was a case of, these are the important subjects. These are the, what do you want to aspire to be? What are your potential? What do you enjoy doing as a career? And then considering that in mind, you have to give them 50-50. 50% of the subjects are those that they need to do to aspire to be what they want to be. 50% of those subjects are those
Something
that
to fall back
are
on.
good at, so that they get the results. Because they might not be definitely good at something, because GCSEs is basically the very beginning. They probably don't know what they're good at, they don't know what their abilities are. When they get to that secondary school level, they have more experience.
I'm sure in schools there are mechanisms in place, and I'm sure Kuratulan would tell us more about that, because you work in that sort of age group, 13 to 25. And, you know, one of the areas of your expertise is that you work with that particular group who is actually at school or being dropped out of school. So can you tell us, when choosing subjects prior to your GCSE has started, clearly there is a mechanism in school that they follow and they know your strengths when they place you in a particular group?
I don't think they do. They used to, but now they don't. Like year 9 is still, correct me if I'm wrong, year 9 is still when you choose your subject for the year 10 and 11.
That's right.
So what you might, I think a lot of young people don't have the right guidance to choose their skilled or their strength subjects.
Do you not think that within the 9 years of academic relationship with the teachers in school?
No, because I think
to be quite honest, to be quite honest, looking at it from an economical point of view and governmental issues, they need to fill seats as well.
That's right.
They need to fill classrooms. There'll be subjects where nobody wants to go, and they will try and encourage children, oh, you'll be good at this, why don't you take up that?
Right, okay.
Not because they need to do that, not because it's good for them, because they need those
So the
classes
credibility
filled.
of mentoring...
And the school needs to function, financially it needs to function. They can't allocate teachers to subjects if there aren't enough students there.
So what you're saying is that the credibility of mentoring and opinion from the teacher is now at...
The personal level, personal relationship is gone. Now, each child is not a student, is a point. The stronger the point outcome
or a
of
head
school,
count.
Yes, the more they achieve in your good subject, the more funding they get for next term. So the young people aren't seen as young people or as individuals, they're seen as a number or pound signs. And that's what a lot of schools are doing now. Well, that's what the government has moulded schools to do. So with you saying, oh, aren't they nurtured?
So choice of wrong subjects. How did you go about getting...
I struggled. I struggled, even though I know how to go about moving my children from... I struggled to the point where my children, my school was full in certain subjects, particularly science are very demanding subjects, so the subject classes are very full up. To move your child up to a higher level, even though they are capable of it, it's almost impossible. you get the answer. Sometimes I even got the answer, well, the class is full, you'll have to just make do with this term. Now that's one term lost, one term of work lost that person, individual, will have to catch up on because there's no space.
I actually don't want to get into the micros.
I would be able to challenge that. I would be able to challenge the teacher. Would every parent be able to challenge that teacher?
And that takes us back to the same issue we talked about yesterday, that because our parents, those parents who actually don't speak English, they won't be able to go to the parents and the teachers and say, right, okay, I don't agree with the choice of subjects that you've suggested for my child. I don't think a lot of parents know that within the GCSE level that we have at the moment, if your child is in the foundation group of classes, he can't get higher than a C. You won't get you tell us, what do you think the parents should do at that stage when they are unable to choose what the subjects are? Do you think the community is helping?
Like I said to you,
Idaras are helping? Professionals who are actually people like me?
Within our Idaras have a very big responsibility.
Okay.
They've been down that route. They've done that. They know how to get the job. They know how to work. They've been through the education system. They have a responsibility to their extended community.
But they're fulfilling their roles, they're not.
Okay, so my question to you. So now, clearly we talked about this particular issue yesterday. Those parents who are unable to speak to the school, you suggested that they need to refer to the community. People who are actually around there. So those parents, वो लोग जो हमारे वो parents जो ये प्रोग्राम आज देख रहे हैं, अगर क्योंकि हमारी ये कोशिश है कि हम अपने पेरेंट्स को ये बात की जो है वो बहुत ही ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंस पे जो है गौर करवाएं कि आपके बच्चों की जो एजुकेशन है, आई एम श्योर आपको ऑलरेडी मालूम है, लेकिन उसमें जो चॉइस ऑफ सब्जेक्ट है दैट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एज़ वेल. लेकिन जब आप उनके बच्चों के GCSEs के सब्जेक्ट जब चूज़ करते हैं तो प्लीज़ डू पे अटेंशन और उनके साथ मिलकर थोड़ा सा काम करें ताकि आपके बच्चों के जो सब्जेक्ट्स हैं वुड मेक देम ए बेटर पर्सन इन द फ्यूचर. बिकॉज आपको पता है कि ये रिसेशन है, अगर आप सही फील्ड में अपने बच्चे को नहीं भेजेंगे तो आपका बच्चा जो है वो एक्सेल नहीं करेगा. तो यू नीड टू स्पीक टू योर चाइल्ड एंड फाइंड आउट व्हाट दे वांट टू डू एज़ वेल. और इसी ज़िमन में आपने अपनी कम्युनिटी को भी कंसल्ट करना है, अपने इदारों को. सो गोइंग बैक टू योर कंसर्न, आपके ख्याल में हमारे लोकल इदारों की क्या रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है?
जैसे अभी बात हुई थी कि हमारे लोकल इदारे में भी प्रोफेशनल लोग हैं कि जिनको बहुत सारी चीज़ें मालूम हैं, लेकिन वो इन्वॉल्व लोगों के ज़ाती मामलात में इंटरफेयर नहीं करना पसंद करते.
No, but this is community affair.
So it's community, but only if you involve people. आपका एज ए पेरेंट आपकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि जो चीज़ आपको खुद नहीं मालूम है आप मदद मांगें. मदद मांगना जो है ना वो कोई शर्म की बात नहीं है. नहीं पता होना और उसके ऊपर उसको उस बात को मतलब गैर ज़रूरी समझना, इम्पोर्टेंस नहीं देना, ये आपकी नुकसान आप ही ने होना है. उसका लॉन्ग टर्म में नुकसान आपके बच्चे हैं, आपके बच्चों को नुकसान होना है. अगर आपके बच्चों को उस चीज़ से आपको प्रोटेक्ट करना है तो आपको ये रास्ता इख्तियार करना पड़ेगा कि जिसमें दूसरों से मदद लें. और दूसरों का भी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, हमारे अपने इदारों के अंदर, हमारी अपने दोस्तों में, रिश्तेदारों में, इन सब की एक जिम्मेदारी है.
जी, ये द रीज़न वाई हमारी कोशिश है कि आप इसको प्रोग्राम को थोड़ा सा बायलिंगुअल रखें, क्योंकि हमारी सिस्टर मिसेस जैदी ने हमें फ़ोन किया है एंड शी इज़ रिक्वेस्टेड कि आप जो है वो पेरेंट्स जो इंग्लिश बोलते हैं वो तो इस प्रोग्राम से बेनिफिट कर रहे हैं, लेकिन वो पेरेंट्स जो इंग्लिश जो है वो उनकी फ़र्स्ट लैंग्वेज नहीं है, उनके लिए ये प्रोग्राम और भी ज़्यादा यूज़फुल हो सकता है अगर हम उनकी ज़ुबान में बात करें. तो आपके लिए ये बेनिफिट की बात है कि आप जो है इस प्रोग्राम के प्लेटफॉर्म से फ़ायदा उठाइए. आप हमें कॉल कीजिए, हमारे स्टूडियोज़ में कांटेक्ट कीजिए. आपके जो कंसर्न है, ज़ाहिर है अगर आप ईमेल नहीं कर सकते तो आप हमारे स्टूडियोज़ में कांटेक्ट करके आप अपने क्वेश्चंस जो है वो उनको ज़रूर लिखवाइए, अपने कमेंट्स लिखवाइए. वी वुड टॉक अबाउट दोज कमेंट्स. अपने सीनियर्स एनालिस्ट जो आते हैं उनके साथ उनको डिस्कस कर सकते हैं. बिकॉज़ अगर हम अपनी आज की जनरेशन की लुक आफ्टर नहीं करेंगे और अपनी आज की जनरेशन को हमने अच्छा जनरेशन, एजुकेटेड जनरेशन, अच्छे प्रोफेशनल्स अगर आज क्रिएट नहीं किए, अच्छे डॉक्टर्स आज क्रिएट नहीं किए, अगर हमने उनको अच्छे सोसाइटी के फिगर्स नहीं बनाया, our tomorrow's generation and our whole of the nation would see the consequences, and we don't want to see that. In fact, we can't afford to see that. And that's the whole reason why we're doing this show, isn't it?
The whole reason is that you have to understand कि अब ये हमारा मुल्क है, हमारा घर है, यहीं हमने रहना है. जब हमको यहीं रहना है तो हमें एक मुकम्मल सोसाइटी पैदा करनी है, not individuals, not little pockets of oh I'll do this and I'll do that. एक पूरी कम्युनिटी बनाने के लिए बहुत सारे वास्ट अरे ऑफ ऑक्यूपेशंस की ज़रूरत है और वो ऑक्यूपेशंस हमारी अपनी कम्युनिटी से आएंगे तो हमें ही फ़ायदा होगा उसका। और अगर हम उस चीज़ को लिमिट कर देते हैं कि you know we pick and choose what we want to do, we're limiting ourselves and we're not integrating with the outer community. We're not going to be accepted as citizens of this country if we don't integrate. We can't integrate if we don't know what's going on, you know.
Well, I was saying, for example, for youth worker, I'm one of few in my area.
I'm aware of that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can take Kurathalan, for example.
Exactly.
I don't know many Asian women who are working with youth except for Kurathalan.
But there's a need, because there's times when I've been called by the police or by the social service to interpret or go home when I do my home visits with my colleague. You can't speak English. Now I'm on a call. Do stop what I'm doing, being called to the police station or to the hospital social services and translate and then make sure the parents are aware of what the procedures are. Now, if there's one me or two, there's few of me, no, if you like 1% of me, and how many Asian young people there are who are in need of my support, who need advice and guidance.
We need people more like Annie only because this attitude of we need a safe house. The children need someone within our
The safe house can only be our mosques and our idara, isn't it?
No, it's the individuals inside those mosques. If that child thinks he's done something is not acceptable, he's done something wrong, and there's nowhere for him to go or her to go, where are they going to go? They're going to go to other cultures that may not give them the right advice according to our beliefs and our culture.
So what you're saying is that our idaras, they just don't have that. I think it is understood that our idaras think, or the professionals, or I should say the chair people or the cabinet members of idara, they think that they only have one responsibility, and that is to have behtareen muharram ki majalis.
Yeah, it all depends on the people within the idaras who run them. I mean, without giving too many examples, in our own community in Leicester, I am very grateful and very happy that a lot of responsibility is passed on to the younger people. And by doing that, you're not only giving them responsibility for future with guidance. You know, we still have
you
our
are actually
elders,
giving them guidance, and you become role models for them.
And then they become role models for those younger children that are coming up to them. And when we give them responsibility, they not only understand how the whole thing works and whatever it is, but they become responsible.
Do you think हमारे इदारों ने जो है वो misunderstood the concept of idara? They made idaras with a vision that इनका एक ही काम है इदारे का, और इदारे का काम है रमज़ान के अंदर 30 इफ्तारियाँ करानी है और मुहर्रम के अंदर 40 दिन खूब मजालिस करानी है।
ये हम अपने कल्चर के अंदर से नहीं निकाल सकते।
नहीं, बस यही काम है इदारे का।
हमने इसको अपना कल्चर बना लिया है।
यही काम है इदारे का।
यही काम है ना, जो ख़ास तौर से इस मुल्क में रहते हुए हमारा इदारे का ही सबसे अहम काम है।
क्या इदारे की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज ये नहीं है कि हमारी जो यूथ इस वक्त परेशान है, do something for the youth, give something, give them a platform.
We have somewhere for them to go, but are we using them?
Where is the safe house for them?
The safe house is the idara, but with the people that are running it. You know, if they're people of their own age group and they have somewhere for them to communicate, our imams are people that they should be able to communicate with confidence. The problem we have in our communities, there is nowhere for our children to go in confidence.
Right.
There is nowhere for them, there is no there's no Samaritans within our Shia community, you know, where they can ring up and say, I need help, what should I do?
But
without thinking,
I'm sure it won't be a bad idea.
If they ring up, how do they know that when they go to their local imam, the next thing they know, it will be discussed over tea at somebody's house? So-and-so's child was doing
because
this,
we are such a closed community.
But for the wrong reasons. Being close is a good thing, but being close for a positive reason is the same situation. If somebody goes to a relative thinking that, I can't say this to my mom because she'll get upset, can I say this to so-and-so? Maybe they will give me the right advice.
Yeah.
they will give them, they might say to them, no, you know, you need to speak to your parents about it.
So I'm not so much talking about, you know, the issues which may put them, you know, at risk of or exposing something that they don't want to disclose in the wider society or intra-community level. I'm just talking about the issues, i.e., and those issues can be discussed on the masses. So, for example, somebody who's just doing GCSEs or on the verge of doing GCSEs, there should be something that our idara should offer for those children who want to take up those courses and say, right, okay, guys, there is an education committee, for example, within our hall, or within our masjid, within our idara, there is a small members of professionals who are from the academic background.
I know
they give
counselling.
counselling.
They set up lots of, especially coming close to exam times, we have like sessions for the children, GCSE A-level. Children that are in universities can teach younger children.
That's right.
You know, any's age, younger than any, professionals, not necessarily people that are working, kids that are in university, they're in their summer breaks, they can spend time with the youth that are younger than them coming up and give them time.
Is this what's happening in your idara? Is that what you're saying?
To some extent, what they will do is they will set up classes. They're available to them. Those options are available to them, and the information is given to the parents, not just to the children. So
you see, this is fantastic.
Tuition, it's in it's similar to a tuition process.
Sabreen, I think this is absolutely important, and it is actually a fantastic case study. So if all those idaras who are actually watching us, I mean, if you are, you know, a senior personnel in any of the idara up and down the country, throughout the Britain or anywhere in the Europe, if you have a pilot program, or if you've got a particular division of how you manage your idara, there are responsibilities that you've got within your idara that you would like to share with us. For example, if you do anything other than namaz, roza and Aftariya and Muharram, anything other than these activities, if you're doing anything which is phenomenal and worth mentioning, please do write to us. We'd like to hear from you, because I think something which our sister Sabreen mentioned that our brothers in Leicestershire Imam Barga are doing, it's great that what they're doing, they're actually giving guidance, educational help back to the youth who actually need help. And I know of some idaras who actually do some sort of employment trade-off, which means that the idara would become a employment board. So all those unemployed would go to idara and their names would be published, their expertise would be published, and those who actually are enterprise owners or they're entrepreneurs, they would have job vacancies published only in idaras, and they say, right, okay, we're looking for these people, please contact us. So if you have similar examples, we'd like to hear from you, because it's all about empowering our youth, and that particular model where they actually helping the youth get where they want to be is a fantastic model.
Extracurricular activities as well, where you're involving young people
by taking them off the street.
Yeah, by taking them off the street, bringing them closer to yourselves. It's in those surroundings that you'll get children to open up to you.
I think
they won't open up to you over a cup of tea or lunch or in the middle of the mosque when everybody's watching you. It's when you encourage them to come to you out of that, you know, religious circle and into a more social circle. That
in a less,
if they're having problems with their studies, if they're having problems at home, if they're having other issues that they want to discuss with someone, they need a safe surrounding where they can do that.
I mean, that was a point of view of, you know, a parent. You work with the youth. Speak on behalf of youth. What do you think they would feel, and what do you think they may be thinking when they talk about idara, and why are they so segregated from their mosques?
I think that I think they're lost in translation, and you hit the nail on the head. They won't, even if they want to talk to me, I talk to most of my young people who come to me in a park while kicking football or just talking, hanging out. That's where they come to me. Then I'm there every week at certain hours. They come to talk to me one-to-one, in an informal, relaxed environment where they feel comfortable and safe, you know, and
they feel
terms.
that you're not going to go behind their back.
And I think with the adaris, I think a lot of young people have no ownership. They go, "Oh, mum and dad forcing me," or you know, I want to pass my exams, so I might go there just to get some more sabab. But I think if they don't have ownership, or whether it's anything or the subjects they're doing at school, to jobs they're doing, or even the value themselves in the mosque, active members, they're not going to lose interest. It's like if they have some ownership, they feel more proud and they feel extra responsibilities.
So what you're saying is that those members of youth do have this particular view that they're not going to go to the mosque or idara because they don't see somebody who they can relate
That's
to.
right.
Because
And
there's
they
a
lost
senior
ownership.
figure is older than probably my granddad, and how would I approach
then-
that Sadr Saab?
And then most of the people who you said that we need profession, most of the professions they can't relate to, because our professional people, mashallah, they have left in the city circles, they're in deprived areas, gone up to somewhere where
Nicer areas.
and they lost touch with the grassroots community. Now, if you're expecting a lawyer who's on six-figure sum to come back and work with young people, they lost touch with what's going on nowadays.
So the disconnect, right? Okay, so we can take that. I mean, that's a very good point again, Kuratulain. So what you're saying is that those professionals who were once part of the community, they have managed to secure affluent careers. They've done mashallah well, and they've now moved on. When they move on, they actually do the disconnect. They actually don't keep in touch with the community where they could add value back to the community and possibly offer a degree of help, not necessarily financial help.
No, but that support, that encouragement, inspiration. Whereas me, in my job, yes, it might not be a six-figure sum, but I know I helped a lot of young people, and I gained a lot of young people's trust, and I helped them go from right to wrong, from wrong to right, you know, and because I understand the issues.
Right. So, Samreen mentioned that Leicestershire Imam Barga, you know, giving them a good mention on this episode, so I'm sure they would be pleased with you. So no, because this is exactly what this is the community television.
No, this isn't, like I said to you, I'm not.
You're not promoting that. I hope you're not doing promotion for no reason.
I'm saying in general, a lot of our idaras and those that aren't should be.
I'm not aware of any.
Passing on the responsibility to our younger people. Giving them responsibility will put them in a position where they have to do something, and they will know what they want. They know what they want to do.
Right. I'll come back to you on that.
You've given them the basic training, you've given them the basic education, the religious education. Now you need to tell them, now this is your job. We're here to help you, we're here to support you.
Right.
But it's these people that don't want to move from their position of responsibility and control. You're not losing control.
I get it. I would talk about that, but I've got one concern which I would ask Kuratulain. But you mentioned the ideal example of Leicestershire Imam Barga, where youth are able to go back to Imam Barga and seek help, and there is professional help available for them. Fantastic. Because you're not from Leicestershire, do you have similar response from your local Imam Barga?
Yes, I do. But I'm one of them people who I'm the young person who
they go to.
They go to.
Right.
You know, so
did you, when you were growing up, did you have access to such support from your idara?
Apart from your Sunday madrasa, you know, you didn't. Apart from
I'm not talking about madrasa, because madrasa is an institution.
Okay. No.
So you didn't get that from your idara, right? Okay. So did you have a question why you didn't?
You don't question things, do you? We're not told to question things. You're told to
just take it as it is.
Take it as it is and be grateful, and that's it.
Yeah, you be grateful that you're getting majlis.
That's it.
And
iftari and niyaz,
and just be grateful because you're getting to see nice Maulanas.
But to be fair,
what is the role of our Maulanas, Kuratulain?
Apart from talking religiously, I think they're the ones who we should be able to seek advice in confidence.
What sort of advice? Are you only expecting religious advice from your Maulana?
No, not really. Life learning skills. You know, and if we look at them in majlises, you look up to them for that knowledge, but maybe not that experience. But I think we need them to be more active with reaching out to young people, not in a religious way, but in a more down to earth, understand issues like Maulana Sahib. I've got this. What advice would you give? I can't come to my mum and dad. I can't go to my family, but I feel like I can trust you because you're a man of trust, and a highly respected member of the community. So, and I know you won't judge me for what I've got to say, but I've got this drug problem, or my brother, whoever, is doing this. What advice can you give me? And you know, but we don't have that.
So you don't have that because you don't feel that our Maulanas are able to relate to.
Again, they're the ones, the Maulanas, who have lost touch with the real issues.
Okay.
With your lawyers, your businessmen.
Can we not, before you start, just on the same note, a question to you.
Yeah.
Why don't our parents want their children to become doctors as well as Maulanas?
That's changing quite a lot. That attitude is not the same, as far as I am aware, that the attitude is not changing.
What's your understanding of it?
My understanding is that there is a large group of young people now an influx of lots of young people that I know of on a personal level that have come from the hawzas and have done the
Mashallah.
education, have become good professional alims from the age of, these are up to the age of 30.
Professional alims.
Professional alims.
And what do they do in their full-time life?
That's what I'm saying, that these are people that have grown up in this community, have educated in this community, have gone through those challenges that those young people are now faced with. But they can see it from another perspective, and so their advice is going to be more strengthening. They need to understand their responsibility. Their responsibility is not to just do Jummah namaz. Their responsibility is not to sit on the mimbar and just read the majlises and drop in the odd hint here and there during that majlis. Their responsibility is on a social level. They're social workers for our community.
Yes.
Viewers, by no means this is an attempt or an effort to put a finger on our ulama. We respect our alim-e-deen, we respect our ulama, Hujjatul Islam, all the respected ulama, Muslimin are respected to us. We look up to them. The reason why we're actually talking about our ulama is because we're trying to understand the role of our parents, and we're trying to understand the role of our ulamas, and we're trying to understand the role of our idaras, and also the role of our youth moving forward, because these ulamas have passed on the legacy to the youth, and now it is our youth's responsibility to take the religious take the legacy of the religion from our ulama, respect the ulama, and then also become a valuable citizen. Is that not fair to say? Because we're not, criticizing the ulama in any way.
We seem to
we're
forget
criticizing ourselves.
They are just human beings.
The parents
They're
as
not
well.
abnormal human beings. They're not superhuman
Absolutely.
beings. They're not
They're role
supermen.
models.
They're role models, just like every other person is a role model, but they have a lot more
Responsibility attached.
That's right.
because the role model that they are setting for the children is higher.
Yeah.
But then when they're doing that, it's all very good sitting on your platform and being a role model. You need to get off that platform and walk their walk,
Yes.
sit with them, talk with them, eat with them, and understand what level, and remember what it was like for yourself.
Yeah.
Before
Whilst
you got
growing
that
up.
amama,
That's right.
before you went to the hawza, when you were a teenager in that
That's
school.
right.
Absolutely.
You
I
know?
think, mashallah, we are able to now see a lot of young,
Yeah.
talented ulama
Yeah.
who are,
And they
British,
are
they're
role models
by
for our
birth.
children. They really are. Those young people that are now coming up, and we see them on our screens, we see them all the time.
Absolutely.
And they are our role models for our children, and we need to
I think the
appreciate
president,
that.
our president of Majlis Ulama Europe, brother Rizvi Sahab, he himself speaks absolutely eloquent English, and he can speak to any members of youth. He actually attends seminars for British Asians and British Muslims, and he can. And this is exactly what we need moving forward. We need members of youth who are able to add value back to the community, do something, and I think this needs to translate into idara. That's fantastic, and I think today's show has been absolutely of great value, because not only that we talked about the traditional government-driven statistical show where we're just talking about youth, this is what youth are doing, this is what youth are meant to do, discrimination on this level. Whilst this is the case, we still need to look at
The solution.
whatever is happening in the wider society. What is it that our community can do?
Right.
And what our community can do is of great deal, which our government is failing to do. We are able to look back, and this is purely for our senior members of youth who have actually progressed in their careers and they've moved on. Please look back, and you were once a teenage child as well. It is the time for you to do something valuable for the community, so that once you have moved on and you have children, there is somebody to look out for your children, because after all, as I mentioned in the beginning of the program, the reason for this show is purely to understand the issues that we are surrounded by. Our youth has got toughest task at hand at the moment, and it is our job to empower our youth to be a better youth, a better nation, to be a professional nation of talented people. And the only way we can do that is by empowering them, by giving them what they need, by giving them guidance, and also in the toughest climate where economical and social and all sorts of pressures after 7/7 and 9/11 and these sort of horrific incidents, we have got a tougher task now. Let's add value back to the community. Let's make this community a happy community, and inshallah a prosperous nation for the reappearance of our Imam alayhi salam. Let us all be an ideal nation, inshallah tabarak wa ta'ala. Until next Saturday and Sunday, I'd like to thank my honorable guests today. It was a very interesting show. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
On behalf of Hidayat Television, Hidayat Cabinet and Hidayat family who benefited from these episodes so far, we would like to thank you, and thank you very much for all the viewers who actually written to us and spoken to us live. You can still write to us. VOY is our email address, Voice of Youth, voy@hidayat.tv. And until next Saturday, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.